Another day, another story. A Russian drone has hit the protective shelter over Chernobyl's damaged nuclear reactor, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said. The overnight strike at the site of the world's worst nuclear accident caused a fire that has since been extinguished, he added. Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. The UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, said radiation levels inside and outside Chernobyl were normal and stable, but later the plant's chief engineer, Alexander Tatarchuk, said the possibility of radioactive substances leaking now exists. Russia has denied any claims it attacked Chernobyl, stating its military does not strike Ukrainian nuclear infrastructure, and any claims that this was the case do not correspond to reality. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, which monitors nuclear safety around the world, said fire safety personnel and vehicles responded within minutes to an overnight explosion. No casualties were reported, the agency added. The agency remains on high alert after the incident, with its Director General Rafael Grossi saying there is no room for complacency. Mr. Tatarchuk told Ukraine's state news agency that the situation is under control. A catastrophic explosion at Chernobyl in 1986 sent a plume of radioactive material into the air, triggering a public health emergency across Europe. While the immediate disaster was mitigated and an area where people were told not to live established, the incident saw a rise in cancer rates in the surrounding population. The radiation shield is designed to prevent further radioactive material leaking out over the next century. It measures 275 meters, 900 feet, wide and 108 meters, 354 feet, tall and cost $1.6 billion, £1.3 billion, to construct. Zelensky posted footage on X appearing to show damage to the giant shield, made of concrete and steel, which covers the remains of the reactor that lost its roof in the explosion. Another 15 meters, 50 feet, to the side and there would have been a radiation accident, Ryhor Yashchenko, chief of the agency that manages the exclusion zone around Chernobyl, told reporters, according to local media. Since 1990, Professor Jim Smith from the UK's University of Portsmouth has studied the aftermath of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster and, while he admits the strike was a horrendous attack on a very important structure, he is not concerned about the radiation risk. Professor Smith told the BBC a thick concrete sarcophagus below the damaged outer shield covers radioactive particles and dust from the explosion. Simon Evans from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, was head of the Chernobyl Shelter Fund, which oversaw the construction of the protective dome in the 2010s. He described the apparent strike as an incredibly reckless attack on a vulnerable nuclear facility. The shield was never built to withstand external drone attack, he told the BBC, but a complex piece of decommissioning kit, built to contain the radioactive materials inside and to help safely deconstruct the broken reactor. The strike appeared to hit the maintenance system of a crane designed to remotely take the reactor apart, he said. There appears to be pretty serious damage to the outer and inner cladding, he added, but said a fuller assessment of the damage will be needed before the bank can determine its costs. Mr. Evans said the mission to build the shelter was the world's largest ever collaboration on nuclear safety, with more than 40 counties working together on it. Ever since the start of the war, it's been tragic to see that international cooperation undermined by reckless acts, he added. Zelensky claimed the attack showed Russian President Vladimir Putin was definitely not preparing for negotiations, after US President Donald Trump said Putin had agreed to begin talks to end the war earlier this week. The incident at Chernobyl comes after increased military activity around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine, the IAEA said. In December, Ukraine and Russia accused each other of launching a drone attack on a convoy of vehicles transporting IAEA experts heading to the Zaporizhzhia plant, which is Europe's largest nuclear station. The agency last year urged restraint when an attack on Zaporizhzhia raised the risk of a major nuclear incident. Russia and Ukraine traded blame over the attack in August. I'm more concerned about Zaporizhzhia than Chernobyl, Professor Smith said. The reactors at Zaporizhzhia are currently shut down, but there is more live fuel there. Chernobyl is still very radioactive, but it's not in a hot state because of its age. The number of people who died in the Chernobyl disaster remains disputed. According to the official, internationally recognized death toll, just 31 people died as an immediate result of Chernobyl, while the UN estimates that 50 deaths can be directly attributed to the disaster. In 2005, it predicted a further 4,000 might eventually die as a result of the radiation exposure. The only state in the world that can attack such facilities, occupy the territory of nuclear power plants, and conduct hostilities without any regard for the consequences is today's Russia. And this is a terrorist threat to the entire world, he wrote. Russia must be held accountable for what it is doing, he added. Andriy Yermak, the head of Zelensky's presidential office, said Ukraine planned to provide detailed information to the US about the Chernobyl strike. Without attributing blame, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, Director General, Rafael Grossi, said on X that the Chernobyl strike and the recent increase in military activity near another nuclear plant in Zaporizhia underline persistent nuclear safety risks, adding that the IAEA remained on high alert. Concerns have repeatedly been raised during the conflict over the safety of Ukraine's 4 nuclear plants, especially the Russian-occupied Zaporizhia nuclear plant, the largest in Europe and among the world's 10 biggest. The timing of the attack on the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, ahead of the apparent peace talks between Russia, the US and Ukraine, seems bizarre in the extreme. It is surely not the action of a rational country preparing for peace. Nuclear power plants, especially Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, ZNPP, in the south of Ukraine, have been at the heart of Russian operations since the invasion. Russia has been making threats of nuclear attack for 3 years. The latest event at Chernobyl has seen a drone with a high-explosive warhead, apparently an Iranian-made Shahed, detonate on the new safe confinement shield which was placed over the wrecked No. 4 reactor, the site of the 1986 power plant disaster. The previous, Soviet-era, sarcophagus containment erected after the original explosion and fire had deteriorated, so the new structure was put in position in 2016. Constructed of steel and concrete, it is large enough to contain St. Paul's Cathedral. However, it has now been breached. Thus far there is no sign of elevated radiation levels outside the plant, but the situation is being monitored. The Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, denied Moscow was responsible for the attack. Without presenting evidence, he said Ukrainian officials wanted to thwart efforts to end the war through negotiations between Trump and Putin. The Russian military doesn't do that. They don't. This is most likely just another provocation, Peskov said. That's exactly what the Kyiv regime like to do, and sometimes, in fact, does not shy away from doing. Ukrainian emergency services published a photograph that showed a searchlight illuminating a ragged hole in the roof of the plant's damaged sarcophagus. Zelensky is in Munich, where he will hold talks with the US Vice President, J.D. Vance, that may offer some insight into Trump's vision for a negotiated settlement to the war. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.